So my name is Meni. I'm originally from Israel. I live in Sweden today. I'm the Chief Product Officer and Interim CEO of Namaste Technologies. If you want to hear a little bit more about what we do, feel free to come to our booth. What I'd like to talk about today is AI. And as we all know, AI is very hyped. There is actually a famous quote from Dan Ariely from 2014 that went something like, big data is like teenage sex, right? Everybody thinks that everybody else is doing it. No one really knows how to do it, so they're claiming that they're doing it. So fast forward to 2019 and switch big data with AI, that's what everybody is essentially saying. And the reality is that very, very few companies that actually claim to use AI do that. The Verge ran a survey or a research this last month that established that 40% of companies across Europe that claim to use AI are straight out lying and don't actually do that. So why is that? And the reason is just because saying the words AI or machine learning opens your investors' wallets and opens your customers' wallets. And a study done by Price Intelligently, which is a Boston-based company that uses data to price products, found that if you literally add the words AI and or machine learning to your pitch, people will pay more for the exact same product. There's nothing different except just saying those words. So naturally, people use this pitch. So that is the reality that we live in, so a lot of people are doubtful in regards to people who actually say they use AI. But there are some places where AI is actually beneficial, right? Even though on the flip side, you say use blockchain or AI, it doesn't really need that, but you say or use it because it does. And the concept of trying to find a viable space to use AI is based on a fundamental exercise, which is find a real problem that you can actually solve faster with machine intelligence than human intelligence. A great example is another Israeli company that literally listens to sales calls, analyzes what is being said on a call, and provides advice to the salesperson on how they can improve their pitch. It will be very, very difficult to do at scale using someone who sits and listens to your call, but AI could help here quite a bit. So how does this actually relate to cannabis? And if we take the model that we had before, what is the actual problem that we would like to solve using AI, relates to which strain is actually right for you as a user. We know there's a lot of possibilities out there. So how do we choose and recommend the right strain to the right person? So to answer this, let's start with an example or a comparison. Let's look at the standard conventional medicine flow. Let's say you go to a doctor and you tell them that you have a really, really hard time sleeping. That doctor reviews your medical history, examines you, interviews you. She then takes the information above and combines it with her past experience with people that had similar symptoms and her knowledge of medicine that can assist you in overcoming this problem. She will then prescribe you medication, and you'll use it and come back in a week and say, oh, this was actually horrible. I sleep slightly better, but I have really bad headaches now and severe depression, so this is not working really well for me. So the doctor would say, yes, actually, I thought this would happen. This is a possible side effect for people with your profile. Let's try medicine B. And then you repeat this process until you find the right solution for you. And this is in conventional medicine, where you have proper data and history. But now imagine a situation this doctor would know all of your medical history. They would know and remember all the details about all the available medicine out there for this specific condition. They would remember every other patient that had a similar profile, the outcome of every prescription they have ever written, and they were able to connect all these dots within seconds. How much could you improve that trial and error process if the doctor could actually do that? So that is what we're trying to solve within cannabis using AI. The problems, however, is that cannabis has an increased complexity level. At least in Canada, cannabis prescriptions are generic. You go to a physician or a nurse practitioner, and you get a recommendation or a prescription to buy medicinal cannabis. That's it. There's no actual strain or specific oil, flower, THC concentrate, nothing. They just say, go buy cannabis. It's the equivalent of going to the doctor and for them to tell you, here is a prescription for antibiotics. Go research by yourself which one you should actually use. And we know that there are thousands of combinations with different THC, CBD, terpene profiles. It is very, very difficult to know which one you should choose. Sativa, indica, hybrid doesn't really make any sense anymore, right? We know that today. So this makes the recommendation process around cannabis even more complex, giving the patient, essentially, analysis paralysis. Which one should I choose? So how did we decide to solve this? The first part that is needed is structured data. AI is essentially, at the end of the day, garbage in, garbage out. It can only learn and recommend things if you provide it with relevant information. Think of AI as a very stupid child. If you tell them that this is green, that is what they will know. So you have to actually teach the algorithm and train it to understand the data that it is processing. So we had to be able to collect structured data in order to make these recommendations. The second thing we had to do is to extend our existing machine learning core to process data points or features that are specific to the cannabis domain. So the THC levels, the CBD levels, the type, is it dry flower, is it oil, is it concentrate, what is the delivery mechanism, what's the temperature, etc. There are various data points that we actually needed to collect in order to, or collect and process in order to make these recommendations. So the first step was to collect data, but we very quickly encountered the first problem, which is there is very, very little structured data out there in regards to clinical trials and impact that specific strains have on specific symptoms for specific individuals. So to address this problem, we've built an application that essentially creates a peer-to-peer data sharing network. People are able to report symptoms and the evolution of those symptoms as they use cannabis. That gave us access to data. And that is API. So API essentially, just to give a quick background on that, on how we actually convince people to give us data, is a journaling system. You as a user can go in, you can report what your profile is, you can say, I suffer from anxiety or muscle cramps or issues with insomnia, and the severity of them. You can report sessions with specific strains, and you can report the evolution of your symptoms after using that specific strain. For the user, this gives the ability to journal their usage and see the actual impact of specific strains on their symptoms. To us, it gives direct access to structured data in regards to cannabis usage and the impact on individuals and symptoms. The first thing we thought, or at least our machine learning engineers said, no one is ever going to give you any medical data about their symptoms. This is never going to work. So we said, fine, let's build an MVP. We released it, and we're actually very surprised with the amount of information that people were willing to give. We had, in the first couple of months, tens of thousands of downloads and thousands of sessions that were reported. So we were incredibly surprised with the amount of data that people were willing to provide. But there were quite a few issues that we found along the way. The main one was that people don't always provide full information regarding their experience or the right information. There is a lot of bias and a lot of bullshit data that is being provided. So this was the first part where we actually used AI to compensate and fix that. So warning, this will be a little bit geeky. I'll try to simplify it. So the issue that, or the problem that we saw is that people don't report the impact of certain strains or certain symptoms. So let's take White Widow, for example. A certain user reported that it was very beneficial for symptom A, and we gave it a score of 25 for symptom A. They also reported that it was great and delivered a better experience for symptom B, and we gave it a score of 89. Then another user reported a different strain having a very similar experience and therefore a similar score for symptom A, but no information regarding symptom B. So we had this hole here in regards on how this strain affects this symptom. So what we did is we built an algorithm that essentially guesses how to fill these holes. Because that's essentially, if you simplify it quite a bit, what AI with this context is just an intelligent guessing machine. So we were able to use the overlapping data, the similarities in chemical construction of the strains and the reported outcome of users in order to fill out these holes. So we would guess these scores, we would fill them out, we would recommend strains, and as users reported additional usage and interaction with these strains, the model was retrained based on this new data, and we continuously updated these holes within the data set. So essentially what this allowed us to do is to create an enrichment process within the system that extrapolates from direct user feedback to provide us with more information that otherwise we wouldn't have. So now, using AI, we're able to guess what impact certain strains will have on certain symptoms. So that was one of the first use cases that we were able to have. This is a useless slide. Okay. The second step, once we have the data, was to build the actual recommender engine. And the recommender engine moved from neighbor similarity to self-learning decision trees that basically remap themselves, etc. But at the end of the day, the use case was very basic. We wanted for a patient to come in and report their height, their weight, if they wish. Everything is very, very optional, and just to make sure that everybody's calm in regards to the threats of data protection and AI, all of the information is voluntary, and you have an option to register anonymously. So we respect GDPR, PIBETA, HIPAA, everything is compliant, and we have no PII that allows us to track back to you and understand who you are. This is purely designed to be able to provide you with recommendations without knowing who you are and risking your privacy. Jane also reported that she bought Kosher Kush with the following characteristics. She reported her existing symptoms, and 30 minutes post-vaporizing, for that matter, she reported how her symptoms evolved based on that session. So what we were able to do with that is to create a profile about this user and then do two important things. Next time that Jane opens the API app, we'll be able to make a recommendation and say, we've seen that you had these symptoms and you used this strain and you had these results. Based on that data, we would recommend this strain to you as we believe, the engine believes, it will provide better results. Furthermore, if we see a user next time that has a similar profile to this user and similar symptoms, we can immediately avoid having them to use that first strain and immediately direct them to the second strain. And the idea behind that is that if you suffer from anxiety, for example, and we know that THC in high levels could cause severe anxiety attacks, if you happen to choose the wrong strain, you'll never try cannabis again. So it's very, very risky to go into this domain without proper education and proper recommendations. And that's something we're trying to solve. So generally, to explain why we decided to integrate AI into the ecosystem, going back to the first point where garbage in, garbage out, we are uniquely positioned as a company, as a vertically integrated platform that essentially allows us to touch the consumer in every point in their journey. From the moment they educate themselves regarding cannabis, understanding if it's the right thing for them, by using our telemedicine application to receive a prescription, buying the actual cannabis plant on our marketplace, buying a delivery system, being it a vaporizer or any other product on our e-com site, or API when reporting their usage. So the ability to connect all these dots creates a holistic profile of that user, enabling us to provide very accurate recommendations for that specific customer. So an example for that would be if you're reading about oils in one of our content sites, our ability to recommend relevant vaporizers on our e-com site, or recommending oils rather than dry flower on our cannabis marketplace helps you find your product faster. Or if you're looking at premium cannabis on our cannabis marketplace, when you go to our e-commerce site to buy a vaporizer, we will not show you cheap vaporizer, but rather the high-end vaporizers, etc. So that's something that is very, very important to remember when creating this holistic view. This is an explanation of what we actually do as CannaTech. So the video came too quickly, but that was essentially a visual representation of all that whole vertically integrated part and how AI is the glue that connects all these touch points across our ecosystem. So that is one of the use cases that we're solving. There are multiple other ideas and points within our roadmap that we're looking at. One of them is, for example, stock prediction with growth cycles of cannabis. How do you know what should you grow as a LP, or sales license, sales only LP like us, what should you buy, stock, and sell? So the ability to use AI to actually predict demand and potentially pricing becomes very interesting. The concept of conversational commerce and chatbots has been chewed up and really spoken about quite a bit as even more of a hype rather than AI. But if you think about it, 70% of all customer care questions are repetitive and don't really need a human to be answered. So those things can really be addressed by AI-powered chatbots. Additional e-commerce personalization, so as we spoke, connecting the dots from content sites to e-com, the ability to personalize hero banners, create bundling, etc., and providing consumers with a better purchasing experience across all touch points. And direct integration for smart vaporizers, for example, is a huge one that we're looking at today. Instead of having users having to report usage on an app, we would like the vaporizer itself to send information to API in regards to the temperature, what actual THC, CBD concentrations there are in the vapor itself, and use that for the recommendation flow. So removing that element of bias or confusion in the user reporting. So there are quite a few additional avenues that we're currently pursuing. If there is anyone that is doing something in the domain that would like to collaborate, would be very happy to talk. And I don't know if we do questions in this setup or not, but we have 1 minute if anybody wants to. Do we do questions, or how does it work?
Meni, hi, it's Seth Adler from Cannabis Economy. I have a few questions for you, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic.
You're leveraging your power with a microphone. I don't think it's fair, but go ahead.
If anybody has another question or a different question, I'll come over. On my way, number one, was that real information that you already have that's informing your brand?
Correct, yes.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay. What is GTA versus the rest of Canada? What does GTA stand for?
Greater Toronto Area. So
Okay.
we have a last mile delivery company, or we own a stake at a last mile delivery company that can do same day deliveries.
Coming to you in the back row over there. I'm coming to you after I go to this guy. How come you have different brand names for various aspects of your componentry? Why do we call it Uppy as opposed to Namaste? Why? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a marketing question, right? Essentially to create a non-biased app that allows people to feel more comfortable providing the data.
Who's in control of all of it?
We are, of course.
Okay.
But again, it's very important to remember that we do build everything with security by design. We have segregation internally. People don't have access to the data if they don't need. We have the right privacy policies and terms in place in regards to we don't collect data that we don't need. You have the right to be deleted, GDPR compliant. So
good, gotcha. Okay, and is that Ilya over there, raising your hand in the back? I got him over here, and then I'll come to you in the back row with your hand up. That's Ilya, right? I'm coming to you next. No, wait, I'm coming to you next.
Sure. I'm Julian Kasper, and I had a question regarding the data. I know there's a lot of problems with the testing of the products, and I was wondering...
It's a little bit hard to understand. Sorry, could you raise your voice a little bit?
Sorry. I know there's a lot of problem regarding the testing of the cannabis flower. So how would you actually know that if someone reports that it's 25% THC and let's say 5% CBD, that it's actual 25% THC? Wouldn't that trouble your data?
Yeah, this is definitely an issue.
Good question.
This is really a huge issue, both in regards to consistency in the strains that are purchased. So let's say you buy a strain and you validate the chemical profile the first time, and then you try to buy the same strain again, and it differs even from the LP. It's the same LP, it can differ. So that's a challenge that I think there are a lot of companies even here trying to address. The way that we are looking to address this in the future is by collaborating with vape manufacturers that actually have vapor measurements, either during vaporization or have their own independent labs that validate this data beyond the LP testing.
Okay, Ilya, stand up and state your question, please. If you have a question, please raise your hand so I can see you. I'll come back to you next. Go ahead and stand up, and I'll hold the mic.
Yes, hello. My name is Ilya Reznik. I am a chairman of Israeli Cannabis Medical Association, and I have a lot of patients that are coming from United States and Canada and saying, you know that the same white widow or Persian Kush that we used in Toronto or in Colorado just work differently in Israel. So I suppose this is not the same strain or same chemo variant. And how you could rely to reports that were collected about the same strain, so-called same strain from Israel, from Toronto, from Colorado, please.
Yeah, another good question.
Yeah, so it's very similar to that previous question. So I'll elaborate a little bit on what we do in our facility in Canada. And it doesn't solve the entire data collection flow. But in our facility in Canada, we don't only rely on the testing that is provided to us by the LP. So according to Health Canada regulation, they must provide with lab test results for every strain that they deliver to us. But what we do is we actually take a sample from that batch, we test it ourselves, we put an amount aside as per regulation for further testing by Health Canada, and we compare our own independent lab testing with the LP testing to see where we stand. There's actually a very interesting story around that. There was an LP in Canada named Bonafide that bought black market cannabis and sold it, and we were the first ones to actually find that because we did the test in our own lab, and the cannabis was amazing. We're like, this is really weird. It doesn't match what they said in their certificate at all. And we issued a formal letter to Bonify, and then the investigation started. They essentially ended up losing their license, but we have that double verification method to allow us to validate that data.
There we go. There's your double-blind placebo control. Anyway, so state your name and question.
The first point in your presentation was very interesting. You called most of the AI claims bullshit. Excuse my language. And I see that very often. So how are you qualified as an AI? How are you qualified to speak about AI with such authority?
Oh, that's a...
There we go, man. You brought it up.
So, I mean, it's always very difficult to talk of one's self. But essentially, just in regards to background, that's the only way that will help at least people in the audience feel a little bit more confident in regards to what we're doing. So my background is in technology, so I grew up in Israel, and I served in one of our computer units for about 5 years, and then spent quite a few years developing software. I joined Namaste through an acquisition of an AI company, where we spent 4 years building AI for e-commerce. We have still have, as the company operates, over 2,000 customers worldwide. We have Nine West, Kylie Cosmetics, so quite a lot of customers that use our personalization technology on e-commerce that uses essentially the same engine that we use in Namaste. What we did is we ported the core of the e-commerce personalization model and modified it to work with cannabis. Essentially, so that would be my qualification in regards
So that
to
is your qualification. Thank you for that background. I think to kind of continue that question, you spoke of the fact that 40% of these companies are saying they are AI, aren't AI. So we understand that you are a technologist, but we would love for you to kind of explain how what you are doing is actually artificial intelligence and not part of the 40% that are bullshit, to use his phrase.
Yeah, so I can give an example in regards to our recommender.
Please.
And many other recommenders that are out there.
Thank you.
I can't remember the name of that specific product, but they claim to provide a strain recommender solution. And essentially, a lot of the strain recommenders out there are multi-criteria filters. So you go in and you say, this is my symptom. I would like high level of THC. This is my age. And I would like it in dry flower or oil. And then it will essentially just apply a filter on a large data set of strains and show you these are the ones that match your criteria. You can take it even one level further. You can scrape Leafly, because Leafly has characteristics of strains in regards to the level they treat insomnia, muscle cramps, etc., and create slightly more intelligent filters to just filter based on those symptoms. So that's another layer of that. But there's no actual learning in that flow. You only filter existing static data. What we do is we actually take user input, and if they report that a certain strain that we said was good for insomnia wasn't, we retrain that model on an individual level. So for that specific user, we retrain the mapping of the model, and we say, for that specific profile, this is not relevant. For others, we'll wait for further data.
You could call it algorithmic intelligence, couldn't you? Because it's based on the algorithm learning, right? Yeah, here we go. Next and last, your name and question, please.
My name is Eran, and continuing the question regarding the AI and Leafly and what is available in the market. So I read Leafly books, and they are a bit monotonic when they are characterizing the flowers, and I'm not sure how much of it is correct. So do you think the practice is to go from what is averagely known and develop it from there, like AI, or a machine learning based, which is taking your data and find the discrepancies?
So I'm not sure I understood the last
I think
part.
his point is shit in, shit out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why we don't rely on Leafly data. And again, it
He was
all
giving
connects
that as an example.
in a way.
Yeah.
Just to give a final summary on that, for example, and connecting to both of the questions that were asked before. As the market evolves and we see more companies structuring their cultivation processes, for example, we are partnered with a company here called CanBit, and we are working very closely to them as one of a cultivator that we have a very strong relationship with to understand their cultivation process, to understand what is the chemical construct of their strains, and be able to have that data in advance before we get the product to connect that to that question, to the fact on how can we rely on the LP. So building tighter relationship with cultivators also allows us to address it and have more accurate data.
All right, so I'm going to ask for two things now. Number one, please thank Meni for his presentation.
Thank you.
And then also, please thank Meni for going through that Q&A. We gave it to you, man. So give him another round of applause. Thank you. Well played.
Thanks.
Well played.